evening and welcome to the Dark Side. I am your host, Tabitha Purple, and your co-host for today is TC Storm. Welcome to the show. Woo-hoo! No? Hi. Just me then. All righty. So today we are first up going to say congratulations to Morocco for being the first African nation to make it through to the semi-finals. Morocco for the win. Well done. The whole continent and diaspora, I think, are celebrating this win. So this is wonderful news. Congratulations. Yeah, big stuff happening. Wagwan. Yes, anything to add? I know you had a lot to say about football this week, so I don't know if there's something you would like to say, Mr. Storm, about football. I'm letting you go.
Not unexpected. I know there's a lot of people out there saying, hey, this was an upset. I'm like, anybody that knows football would have taken one look at Morocco, one looking at that Portugal team and said, hey, Portugal are lucky not to get slapped up here.
Yes, well, yes, indeed. The kind of information that has surrounded or the coverage of the football has been interesting. We could comment on the fact that, of course, another few European teams are down. So not only have Portugal gone out, but England have also gone out in a blaze of glory. Go on. I'm letting you have your football moment. You do see this. Everyone witnesses that I'm letting the football moment happen at the beginning. I'm just allowed get your stuff in there. This is the Dark Sider, so you know.
I am savoring this. I said I am waiting for Harry Kane's race to be brought up in the abuse that he gets for missing that penalty. And that's assuming he gets any abuse, because he's going to be fully mollycoddled by the British media.
Okay, so this, I guess, for our viewers who are not familiar with football, maybe this is your first time listening to the World Cup. There has been, obviously, England play in the World Cup. This is not their first time. It was Wales's first time. Congratulations to Wales for making it into the in like 60-something years. So you might as well say first time.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but it wasn't.
60-something years, lah. I mean, you might as well say first time. That's a whole entire person die during that period. Like, what are you saying? Born dead, never seen Wales ever play in no final, in no World Cup. Anyway, so well done for making it. But the point being that England's team is plagued by racism. And I think that's the reality of it. There is an ongoing issue, generation after generation, every single World Cup. There are ongoing challenges to this, and this culminated in the last, was it the Europeans or the World Cup?
European
Championship, where some very young black players, British English players, were supposed to take the penalties. Two missed. Was it two or three? Two missed. Three missed their penalties, and all hell broke loose. These people started, these footballers started receiving death threats. They were being called every end, such and such a word. It was actually quite normal for British football, to be honest. But the response by the anti-racism activists and others was actually wonderful, because, of course, it brought up the conversation that is ongoing and continues to be ongoing in English football, particularly, of racism. And so this has led to some, huge moves, like they've been taking the knee for like a year, talking about racism has no place in sport, etc. And this has been causing nothing but upset for the fans. Fans have been in complete anger that their teams will be taking a knee for anti-racism work and, whatever, while still simultaneously calling the players of colour on the field all kinds of names. And so because it was penalties that they missed on, and because these young players got so much abuse and so many bad things happened, this time around, of course, they're being knocked out on penalties in just a regular game this time. And so the question becomes: Is Harry Kane going to be, who is one of the white players, subjected to the same sort of abuse? I mean, one would hope not, right? Like, I don't want anyone to be subjected to that kind of abuse. And if people are going to say anything, are they going to mention his race? Which again, I kind of hope not. I would hope that if it was a black player, they wouldn't do that either. But yes, so that's the backdrop to which Mr. Storm refers to. But I feel like you're going to be waiting a long time. Enjoy your cup of coffee, yeah? Because
listen, I'll be waiting a real long time.
that's not going to happen.
Look, I think also what this does is it brings out a conversation to be had, actually, even more around this area, especially football, and all the venom that has been hurled at Qatar. Why have it in Qatar? Why have it where you don't have these freedoms? Hearing female football fans talk about their experiences and the sense of freedom that they have had attending the matches, it should spark conversations in these so-called free Western countries as to why female football fans aren't having those same experiences and feelings in these countries. So you're having a go at Qatar, saying where's the freedom for people, where are their rights, where are these things, yet people don't feel free to exercise or safe to exercise their rights within your own borders. And I think that's a conversation that needs to be had, and nobody seems to be asking these questions within the media of these countries.
Well, I was going to say, actually, the BBC did a really brilliant piece while they were interviewing fans surrounding the football. They were doing a really great piece on intentionally going out of their way to find football fans that were couples, that were women, and asking this very question. You know, there's been a lot said of this, but one of the things that has been said very loudly is that there are more children in attendance, there are more women in attendance than ever before. There's a real family atmosphere. People feel so delighted they're able to bring their kids. You see the people of the countries of Qatar, the women bringing their children, they're out supporting, and it's really got a real good atmosphere to the whole sport. In the piece that I watched on the bit of journalism they were doing, I was actually quite taken aback with surprise, because they have been pushing this kind of agenda that, you know, all things bad happen in Qatar, and you're never free and it's all terrible, where they actually managed to actually critically engage with the subject and say, well, then what does that say about going to other footballs? And they found a football fan who has been going to matches to the World Cup for 25 years. So she's been to quite a few. And, you know, her response was, actually, it's the first time I've actually really, you feel safe, you feel like you're enjoying it in a way that you've never enjoyed it before. Some of the pressures of being in an intoxicated male environment are gone. And just having that conversation, I think, I don't know if they've done more, because I don't obviously watch the BBC every day, so I don't know what else has been done, but at least I know for that particular news broadcast there was a concerted effort to bring across that point. And I think it's important for us to think about, you know, the idea that what we call freedom is actually very limiting to others, and the idea that your freedom is won and lost on the backs of others is something that the West, I think, does need to contend with. I think it is something we need to contend with. We talked about this when it comes to France's right to have a religious-free society, but in the end, what that has meant is that they're oppressing, particularly some religions more than others, that have expressions that are visual expressions, and this goes, you know, and then you're saying, well, but we're free. well, how are you free if it's off the back of other people, if it's at the expense of others? And I think in some ways Qatar is proving the point that, you know, you have to consider these things for more than just what you individually want. I think it's an interesting conversation to be had, particularly, you know, we've been to football matches together. We've gone on the family day, we've taken the kids, you know, we've done all of those sorts of things, but we haven't been able to take, you know, the next generation of children along to the football matches because it's really difficult to get tickets to games in which there is going to be a more family atmosphere. They have to specifically put those games on or specifically designate them as family games so that you can. So it's really quite sad that you know, in countries where you're so-called free, the idea of taking your children along to a football match where you're, you know, it's part of your family DNA to support the football team or what have you, becomes difficult when they're younger because you say, well, this isn't the right environment for them yet. They're not old enough yet. What, like they're going to watch a football match? What is it about being in the environment that's so toxic that, you know, your children can't attend with you? And that, I think, is quite worrying. I think that's quite disturbing that people are so-called free, but really it's at the expense of others.
Yeah, well, I guess, look, the reality is these nations are free for exactly whom they were designed to be free. And if you want to know who they were designed to be free for, look at who was included and excluded when it came to rights at the framing of the US Constitution.
So just rich white men then.
Pretty much.
Good. Okay, good. I mean, you could say at the turn of the century in the UK, okay, because it's the same thing, huh? Rights to vote. If you look at voting rights at the turn of the century, and that being the 20th century, in the UK, same problem. The only people that could vote were rich white men. So those votes were.
Well,
Yeah.
I said the US specifically because it was a bunch of Europeans that went over there and wrote the Constitution. So they simply shipped all their prejudices over there, and they showed you who their concept of freedom was designed for.
Indeed. All right. So on to some good news. Some good news that the internet has been celebrating for quite a few days now, so about three days. But basically, Brittany Griner is free. She has been released after nearly 10 months in Russian jail custody, and she's been released as part of a prisoner exchange between Washington and Moscow. This has been ongoing for the last year. We've seen all of the information. Brittany Griner is a USA basketball player. She's 6'9". She is one of the WNBA's big stars, basically. Some argue that she's the greatest of all time in her sport, but I would not know about that because I've never seen her play, to be fair. But following along with her story, you know, it's wonderful to have good news. It's wonderful to have good news. It was just a wonderful moment to have good news. This was then offset by many people who are all of a different persuasion, who are not joyful, saying, but isn't it terrible that they've swapped the prisoners and that the person will be, who is this person that's being released? How bad is this? This is awful. And instead of celebrating Brittany's release, the concentration was on to what expense, and we've just talked about to what expense was her freedom given, and the lack of trust, support for Brittany, her family, the community, the work that's being done by governments to negotiate this, and to ensure that the safe handoff, just the kind of callousness to immediately go, oh no, but this is terrible, because when these sorts of things happen between governments quite frequently, and the lesser of evils is often played one off against the other. But yeah.
So there's two factors at play here. One is the toxic nature of US politics as it stands, and that is that it was a Democratic government that negotiated the release. So, of course, the Republicans have nothing positive to say about it. The other thing that is at play here is misogynoir, because they are up in arms that a white man was left in a Russian prison and a black woman was released. Right? And this is what you have to look at. And people have tried to denigrate her and say, oh, she's some basketball player. She's a two-time Olympian. So these same people that are flag waving, talking about patriotism, were happy to leave a two-time gold-winning Olympic medalist who they were all cheering and waving flags for in prison.
Yep.
So, as I said, there's a few things at play in this story as to why some people are unhappy about it. And for that, I'm just going to keep sipping my drink.
All right, in that case, we're going to take us on to our next story for today. You'll notice I'm leading up to a big story which was sent to us by one of our longtime viewers and supporters, but I want to get through some other stories that are really interesting. So this story is a particularly challenging story to European democracy. Always fun. So 4 suspects have been arrested and charged in a probe into European parliamentary bribery by a Gulf state. Okay. So 4 people have been charged in an investigation into suspected bribery at the European Parliament by a Gulf state, reportedly Qatar. Interesting that. So we don't know if it's Qatar. They're just reporting that it might be Qatar. And in this case, I think if you don't know who it is, keep your mouth shut, especially with the backdrop of what's going on. But anyway, that's my little thing. So the Greek MEP and European Parliamentary Vice President Eva Kaili was among those previously arrested in the case, and this continues to go on, that watchdogs and opposition MPs, her MEPs, have said that it could be one of the biggest corruption scandals in European parliamentary history. And so the president has had to fly in to witness the arrests and the searching of homes in Belgium, etc., etc. Cash was seized to the tune of 600,000 euros. A total of 6 people were detained for questioning, 2 of whom have been released. They could be recharged, nobody knows, and 4 of whom have been charged. The prosecutors have said that the suspects, they suspected that a Gulf state had been influencing economic and political decisions of the parliament for several months, especially by targeting the aides that work in the offices. Local media has named the Gulf state under question as Qatar, but the Qatari government spokesperson told them, we are not aware of any details of any investigation. Any claims of misconduct by the state of Qatar are gravely misinformed. And so this continues to go on as an issue. And of course, immediately as they mention Qatar, the story then goes on to say, in a speech last month, here we go, FIFA World Cup in Qatar, there has been, and they begin to then bring up the issues of human rights organizations comparable to modern slavery, etc., etc., etc. And so they go down the road of talking about it within the context of the Qatari people and what's been happening over there. What worries me about the writing of the story is that actually what's not being focused on is the corruption of the European MEPs. That, whether who is on the other receiving, who is trying to do the bribery, it to a certain degree is neither here nor there to me, because you're taking a bribe. The fact that somebody would try and bribe you, it's not surprising. Corruption exists, but the fact that you took the bribe, I think, is a more is more problematic, and the fact that you're trying to influence then the legal frameworks and the laws that are being passed within Europe is much more troubling. And I would really rather have known which laws, which cases, what actually was being influenced, rather than you tell me something I already knew about Qatar. I found it to be speculative in a dangerous and damaging way, because you're not actually reporting on the problems within the European parliamentary system and how these things should be exposed, how long it's taken to do the investigation. I had so many questions after reading the information, but I knew a lot about Qatar, and Qatar is not even necessarily the person who did it. It's suspected. So why do I have to know so much about them when I'd rather know about all of the people that were involved in these scandals and what their countries are doing to hold them to account, and what European Parliament will be doing to actually review the processes and politics that they have been doing over the time that this investigation is going. So problematic, to say the least, and problematic because I think it continues to further narratives that are divisive, that are dangerous, that are feeding into narratives of the other being the bad person, when it is your own European parliamentary people who need to deal with this issue. But there you go. Anything to add to this?
Oh, politicians are corrupt and water is wet. Look,
help me,
I just accept that politicians and governments are paying off other politicians and other governments in other countries. And let's be real about this. Considering how many known and accepted assassinations, coups, etc., that Western governments have organized, planned, participated in, surely somebody paying someone money is the least of concerns. Yeah. So when somebody says, "Hey, somebody paid me," somebody was paying someone in a government some money. Look, before you get upset at that, you might want to deal with the fact that, hey, you got people out here paying people to go and kill people.
Yes. I mean, I do appreciate the point that you're making, but I do question the reporting of these things and the accountability of these things. I understand the point that there is corruption within the system, of course, and that's the some bigger issues are the fact that you're trying to depose governments left, right, and center. And of course, all of those things should be dealt with. But that's precisely my point. You're not in the investigation. They're obviously trying to uncover who is guilty, or that should be their aim, to uncover who is guilty, what have they done, what crimes have they committed, let's arrest those people. But then in the reporting of this story, it comes across as almost as if the MEPs, oh no, poor them, they were handed money. Oh no, these wicked people that came from abroad, from this bad place, are the ones who are doing the bad thing. But I'm like,
You
I'm not really...
expected anything different?
But this is the dark side. We're trying to educate people on how to read the news. I'm just trying to say that we need to be mindful how we read these stories. We need to be mindful how we take in this information, because it is affecting how we vote, how we participate in our own systems of governance, and how we actually hold people accountable. And what really irritates me is, part of the big story is you will hear people talk about conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory, but listen to this. These people are getting paid off for goodness knows what, because we don't know, because the media is not reporting it. Hello. But that's information they could have in their hand. What were they paid off to do? Exactly. Which laws were they influencing? Please do tell us, because we would like to know. But instead, you want to go off down a rabbit hole trail about whether, my 5G signal is great because we had the vaccination. Like, really? Do you not have real news that you would like to focus on? Sorry, I'm ranting, aren't I?
Look, If you want real news, the reality is you have to avoid most of the mainstream media. There's a real lack of objectivity um, in the way that the stories are written, and the information that is presented. And by no means am I telling people to go and watch, what's it, America News Max or whatever, Fox News or any of those things,
Mm.
because those things are simply like tabloids in video form, right?
They're
In fact,
basically
they're not even tabloids, they're the National Enquirer in video
that's
form.
the one. That's the one. I was like, what was that
Right?
magazine that they used to have? The National Enquirer in video form. I don't know if you know
So,
that
look,
reference.
but yeah, anything you read is really troubling in the way that it is presented and the real lack of objectivity. Um, but also, I guess for me, the issue is that people are under the assumption that there is really a democracy in place, um, and that it's without corruption. I'm like, look, the reality is you're reporting on this as though it's some surprise when we know people are getting paid off left, right, and center. You
Yeah.
know, you've got the UK and the Tory scheme, and they've got that pair, the Tory pair, Lady Moan, um, and the corruption coming out of that, and the PPE
Oh,
scandal,
the PPE scandal. Yes, I didn't even
right?
get to that this week.
So
Yeah.
we know that scheme was found to be illegal. We left, right, and center were being told, "Hey, this was wrong. This was illegal. This was done." Who's going to jail for it? Nobody,
Right. Right.
right? So you can't say to me, "Hey, these people are being paid off here." I actually don't care at this point because it's been done so blatantly in your face for so long now, and there have been no consequences to it.
Mm,
It's
mm,
simply been a fact of life,
mm,
and nobody is trying to hide this anymore.
mm.
So this faux outrage, hey, we got paid off. The only outrage they have is that they probably got paid off by somebody that was darker than a paper bag. That's the only outrage here.
Well, yes, maybe that is the angle they were going for. The angle I wanted to see was exactly what happened. You've arrested them. Are we going to see a trial? Will there be information? I had questions, real questions that I wanted answers to, which I was not going to get in that news report.
If
But
you want to, if you really want to talk about corruption, here's corruption for you, and it's not in the EU; it's coming out of the US. Explain to me how the US has just approved or is going to approve increase in military spending. I think it's to 850 billion for the next year,
who needs that kind
right?
of money?
Wait. You're going to vote to increase military spending so that your budget for the next year is going to be 850 billion, but the US military has just failed an audit for the 5th year in a row. They don't know where most of their money is going,
I'm
right?
sorry
So
to
if you
laugh.
want to talk to
Not
me
make
about
that up.
corruption,
What is
how is
that?
it you're voting to approve that budget knowing that you're continuously failing audits? The money's not going to where it's supposed to be going.
And no one's
Nobody's
arrested.
going to jail. You know,
If
as
we failed
I said,
our audits as humans, right, as just regular citizens, you're going to jail, huh?
I'm just not interested in hearing about government corruption and pointing fingers here and there and everywhere when it's being done so publicly and in your face. Don't, as I said, the only outrage I can see and the only difference I can really see in this story is that the people that were doing the payment, as I said,
Well, allegedly, huh? And this is, again, it's alleged that it was Qatar. That really just grates my nerves because, of course, what is this alleged?
Qatar, anywhere from around that region, they're gonna be darker than a brown paper bag. So, you
Yes, but
know,
again, it's all alleged. There
yeah.
is they've not confirmed who the states are that have been involved in. So it might not even be from the Middle East, from the
Listen, but
region.
the thing
Just
is,
joke.
I think the point that you're missing is that it doesn't have to be proven. It only has to be alleged. The darker than a brown paper bag, you don't need proof.
Well, let's go on to our next story before the big one. So this is one story that I just kind of landed on accidentally. And I just wanted to touch on it because I think it's a really interesting, dangerous, something to be aware of. It has real implications for people's long-term health. Um, so uh, so basically in France during the 2020 to 2021 period, so the first year of the pandemic, France as a nation experienced a 30% national increase in STI rates. They were in lockdowns. These people were locked up. How did you manage this? It's actually quite shocking in a way to hear that. I mean, 30% is a huge number of people. As a response, the government have decided that they are going to make condoms free for 18 to 25-year-olds. And basically, that's in a bid to minimize the spread of STIs. Now, bearing in mind that people would actually have to use them, that's one thing. Mr. Macron, the French president, has said, that they're apparently not very good at this subject. The reality is very, very different from the actual theory of what they're doing. And they're basically, the government had been also making contraception free for all women up to the age of 26. But they want to add this alongside in the hope that they can help to lower the STI rates. So why, for me, is this a dark side topic? Why did I want to raise this here? Is because I think that France is probably not alone in the problem. This might be their solution that has made the news, but they're probably not alone in the problem, which is that STI rates are on the increase in all age groups. Statistics I've seen out of the UK, out of the Netherlands, and other countries suggest that STI rates are on the increase in all age groups. But STIs have real damaging, lasting health implications for people. And somehow, when we talk about this subject, particularly if you're a Christian talking about it, people talk about you being a prude and so on and so forth. But you just go laughing and laughing and carry on. What's wrong with you? You've got the chocolate bar out now. Serious? Y'all see what I'm working with? Y'all see? Oh, Lord help me. And I think it's something that, as viewers, I think it's really important that our viewers are aware of their sexual ethic, because it is important to safeguard your health. We've literally just lived through 3 years of a pandemic. I mean, how is it that people don't know? Like, people still don't realize sneezing on someone can cause them to get ill. Well, waving around your genitals, it's putting them anywhere without protection is also going to make another person ill. And as I say, some of these STIs, some are easily curable, of course, but others have long-lasting, hugely damaging, life-altering effects for people's bodies. And so it is really important that you get yourself checked, that you know who the partners you're sleeping with. Having sex is not just a fun pastime activity that we all have a right to. It is actually something that requires you to have some ethic about it so that you can keep your physical health in tip-top condition and shape. So Mr. Storm is chewing because he decided to grab a chocolate bar in the middle of this. So tell us, Mr. Storm, any thoughts on, their small revolution in prevention by providing free condoms for all of those under the age of 25?
Ain't gonna help. There's a reason that the most widely known phrase in French is voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? You can give condoms out to your blue. Listen, you can even send offer to help put them on. It ain't gonna help you.
Well, I hope that it does. I hope at the very least, I hope that the people that it's aimed at start having real and honest conversations about their sexual health. Because that's, I mean, it sounds all fun and games when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. But when you're 35 and you're still reeling from the problems of having the STI, your ovaries are having problems, your womb is having problems. If I'm talking about it from a female perspective, of course. And there are also implications for men having STIs. You know, it can cause infertility, it can cause all kinds of long-lasting health issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just as simple as, you know, we had a little bit of nookie and some fun, or whatever your particular persuasion is for sex.
But the cynic in me looks at this and I'm like, I don't think it's because of the 30% increase in and of itself that they're taking this measure. I think they're taking this or approach to this because there's been a 30% increase and the cost of living is going through the roof, that the only free activity left to people that is affordable is to go and have sex. And I think they're tacitly acknowledging this, that because it's so expensive to go and find other sources of entertainment, they're going to be expecting an increase in the free forms. And so that 30% is going to, you know, pale by comparison.
Skyrockets.
Right? And that's just the reality of it. When you're broke and ain't got nothing else to do,
banging is the way forward.
I'm just saying.
Keeps you warm.
I was about to say,
winter fuel crisis.
Well, and so yeah,
dear.
yeah, that's the cynic in me. I don't think it was just the 30%. The fact that it had gone up by 30%. I'd also be interested in seeing the demographics that affected.
Well, I know for other countries, one of the fastest growing age groups for STIs was actually in the senior category.
The 50s to 60s, because they were getting divorced at higher rates than before.
Yeah. And so that was causing. There was also some talk of the fact that in some countries, you know, you'd have it'd go through the whole hospice, not hospice, what's the word I'm looking for? Old people's home.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would have STIs like slide through the whole old people's home. Well, now that everyone's got it, we might as well continue on our happy activity before we die. And so there is lots of studies done within those age groups or coming up within those age groups. But as I say, you know, to me, there has to be a conversation to be had about your sexual ethic. I think, you know, regardless of your religious, spiritual background, you know, the fact that you can literally be damaging your body by doing these things is something that we should talk about. And we should try not to talk about it by being judgmental about people who don't want to have sex with any and everybody, as well as not being judgmental about people who have decided that they don't want to live by that ethic. But there should still be ethics around how you actually conduct your body. Like it has an implication on other people, you know, and it just, the only thing that comes up in my mind is a TLC song. So I'm just going to go and read our main story for today, I think, at this point.
Well, before you do that, I actually have a story or two that I actually want to put forward. One is coming out of Denmark, and it's actually a really, really horrific story. And that is about people are now calling for an investigation into practices by the Danish government to control Greenland's Inuit population in the 60s and 70s. And what was happening, or seems to have been happening, is that they would be having coils fitted without their consent. And this was seemingly being done to girls as young as 12.
Oh, God.
So there's a call for an investigation into that. Now, this is within the 60s and 70s that people are calling for the investigation to be done. But there are people coming forward who are reporting that actually they believe this was done to them in the 2000s.
Ayo, what are you saying?
So there's this one girl that comes forward and she says she had an abortion at the age of 16. And she went at the age of 21 to have a coil fitted and was told, but you already have one.
Ayo.
And she's like, but I never had a coil fitted. Why do I not know this? Why do I not remember having one fitted? And the only time it could have been done was while she was having the abortion.
Oh my God, that's awful. Do you see the please, Jesus.
Right? So this leads me on to my next story, which is coming out of Honduras. And these things are actually closely connected. Coming out of Honduras, and that is that there is a black market there for abortion pills and morning after pills.
Why?
Because they're illegal in Honduras. Abortion, I believe, is legal in Honduras. So there's a black market developing there. And once again, this is me putting on my tinfoil hat. Which nation is in the process of outlawing abortions?
Or has outlawed abortion? Isn't that the USA?
Almost. Remove legal protection, so now it's down to the states to decide what happens.
Yeah, but only half the states have any kind of legal protection for abortion,
Right.
so they outlawed it in half the states.
Yes, but the nation itself hasn't. So it's a technicality. Anyway, but which nation's in the process of doing that?
Didn't I just say the USA? Do you want me to say someone else?
But okay. Yes, the US. Now, whilst they're at it, what are they simultaneously legalizing?
In the USA? Weed?
Right. So now what opens up? Space in the black market.
Oh, the people who were formerly selling the drugs are now selling the morning after.
Well, I'm just saying that you've created you're creating a vacuum.
You're making sure they stay employed, huh?
Pretty much.
Okay.
You're not letting your unemployment numbers increase.
The really sad thing, and this is something that really makes my heart sad and makes me really heartbroken, particularly as a Christian, as a pastor, right? There is a lot said about the idea that there is a Christian perspective against abortion. And I'm not here to argue whether there is or there isn't. Okay. But there's a lot said about that. And there is this belief that if you legalize or safeguard the abortion practices, that somehow you are complicit in the murder of babies, or, you know, however they want to phrase it. The reality of that is quite different. And that really bothers me, that people are not understanding that when women have access to good, safe healthcare, when they have access to safe systems that protect them, what actually ends up happening is a reduction in the number of abortions, not an increase. People don't suddenly go out and go, I'm just going to get pregnant willy-nilly so I can go down to a clinic and have an abortion. Actually, what has happened is that, you know, like, for example, in the USA, that it hit an all-time low. So you're trying to ban something that was already in decline. But for the people that need it, for the people where it's necessary, you're taking away those safe protections. And the idea that you are doing that under some false notion that you have the unborn child's rights at heart, and not actually looking at the statistics, not actually understanding the issue at play, is, to me, so infuriating and heartbreaking and gut-wrenching, because you're plummeting whole nations of women into chaos, into the hands of black market, because it's not just the fact that they can't get an abortion. It is indicative of a wider societal problem as it pertains to the rights of women. Punt. Full stop. The less access you have to good health care, it is often an indication that your society overall is treating you badly, and therefore increases in crimes. We've seen that as well. Correlation in the US and other places where these things are being discussed, the increase in violence against women. How do you not see that this is problematic? What you're actually voting for harms people. Not to mention, of course, that the black market is dangerous. Okay. Any other stories, Mr. Storm?
No, I'm mindful of time, so we can crack on. I mean, look, I can find stories upon stories upon stories.
Well, I think the last three stories about the kind of sexual ethics, health care, and the provision of healthcare, particularly as it pertains to women, and then, of course, as it pertains to young people, is just an issue that is really infuriating and maybe worth digging into properly to actually look at these things, because I think sometimes people have these ideas that they've gone off with in their conspiracy theory, hole. But the reality is so far different from what they're saying, and it's just infuriating. It's just infuriating. Anyway, Germany. Our final story for today is from Germany. It's not a long story. Shouldn't take us but a few minutes to discuss, really. Basically, 25 people have been arrested in raids across Germany on suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government. Where have we heard such a story like this before? Among the 25 detained was a minor aristocrat called Heinrich the something. I don't know what number that is because I cannot remember my Latin numbers. I apologize. He's from an old aristocratic family and has declared himself the king of this area. He had a lovely ceremony and everything. His family members have apparently denounced him, but the plotters are said to be including members of the extremist Reichsbürger, which is Citizens of the Reich movement, which have long been in the sights of the German police over violent attacks, racist attacks, anti-Semitic attacks. And so the Reichsbürger are not a new group. They actually predate and go back quite far. They've had quite a number of situations that have happened, violence that have happened in the country, and it's involved this Reichsbürger movement. What's been interesting in terms of this particular iteration and how these 25 arrests have come is because the members of the group were involved in more QAnon conspiracy and were taking their inspiration from the American USA, I should say, not American, because America's a continent. The USA situation over there with QAnon and their Capitol Hill riots on January 6th, so on and so forth. And because they had been involved in those conversations, they had come to the point where they were going to overthrow the government. They already have some challenges. There are some 21,000 people who are part of this Reichsbürger movement, but they grow significantly. 10% of that 21,000 plus are thought to be violent, anti-Semitic, etc. The group have been involved in military operations. There was the plot to kidnap the justice minister. There was, I mean, the list of problems. They don't pay taxes. They refuse to pay taxes. They reject the modern German kind of democratic system. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The violent attacks. Oh, here it is. The violent attacks include, in recent years, in 2020, a 43-year-old man who was shot dead, shot dead 9 people of foreign origin in the western town of Hanu. And there was a Reichsbürger member who was killed who was jailed for killing a police person in 2016. So the list of kind of things that these people are involved with continues on, but this being the most pronounced action because they're now mirroring behavior that they have seen elsewhere, enjoying that luxury. What was interesting is there was an article in one of the major newspapers, and it was talking about the fact that this man has decided he's a king, and he has declared it, and he had a ceremony with an orb and a scepter, and he's made himself king, as almost as if to say that there is another way to be a king. The lineages of these families that's exactly what happened. They decided they were king, and that but they made it sound like he's doing something that is this is not what royalty is about. This isn't we've just had royalty for a long time, but we forget that the reason that they're royal is because this is exactly what happened. They decided that they were going to be royal. It's quite hilarious in that regard. In another regard, it's quite scary, because we know that on the western border of Germany, the Netherlands, there is actually an increase of racial tensions, violence, etc. And it is coming from this Reichsbürger group. What is disturbing, sad, worrying, is that Germany, of course, post-war, have gone to great pains to try and deal with these issues up front. They've tried to ensure that these issues are part of their education system in a way that is not the same in other parts of Europe when handling their own history and the violence that's happened within their nation against different ethnic groupings. And so it's sad that you can go through all of that trouble, that you can put in all of that work, that you can do all of that, and then you'll still have a good chunkable size of your population, even though Germany is a larger country. But 21,000 is not to be sniffed at, because if you lived near this 21,000 and you were not of the blonde blue-eyed variety, you could find yourself in danger, right? These people are violent. They do actually enact these policies. So for us, I think is a real disturbing sentiment, but arguably they've been arrested. They will live to stand on trial, and we'll see what happens next. Any thoughts on this story that was sent in by one of our regular viewers?
Right. Now, I'm torn on this one.
You're torn? What are you torn about?
Well, I believe that people should have the right for self-determination.
So vote then. They refuse to vote. They refuse to do anything. What do you mean? The man declared himself an island. He lives in a castle, and they literally...
He owns the land?
He owns the land, and he's buying more.
Right. And he's also implementing his own healthcare systems. They print their own money. So they're becoming independent and putting in place all the measures that would be reasonably needed for them to sustain themselves.
Yes, indeed.
Right? So I'm like, what's the issue?
That they tried to overthrow the government.
Right. And I think the problem is that
they're shooting.
You're associating all of them.
Well, the
right? Because
The
there's different
25
groups.
includes
There's different groups within the
the
Reich,
right side. Yes, as I said, it's
Reich
only 10% that are the violent aspects. So that's
right?
one group. There's this
So
group who
I'm
have
not saying
himself king and is buying his land and doing, but he's also been implicated in the plot to overthrow the government. So
right. What I'm saying is there are some crazy people out there, and I'm not saying that these aren't some extremists within it. But the concept of being self-determining,
mm,
I'm actually okay with that. I think the issue then occurs is where they don't want to allow others to be self-determining, right? So where they then move into saying, well, no, we're going to go move to overthrow the government, then that becomes a problem. As I said, I think it was last week I said when people have had enough of a government, they will remove it themselves,
mhm, mhm, mhm,
right? And yeah, sometimes it has to get really bad before people reach that point.
mhm.
But history has shown every single time people have had enough, out goes the government.
Yes, I mean, I guess that's understandable. I think what disturbs me about this story isn't so much the self-determination. For example, Taiwan wants to be self-determining, right? They're not trying to go into mainland China and decide what Chinese people do in mainland China, huh? They want their island to be self-determining, and they're going on. You could say that of many places where governments have gone in and stuck their flag in. Thinking of places like Hawaii and Puerto Rico and different places like that. What disturbs me about this story slightly is our self-determination comes at the expense of everyone else. So we're willing to allow, encourage, to facilitate parts of our fractions that are violent, racist, and that would remove people from our neighborhoods by force, effectively, is what their kind of ideology is. And I'm like, well, I can understand you being upset with your government. I can understand you having enough money to buy the land on which you stand, and you deciding that this is that I'm going to own this piece of land and I don't want to be part of the system. I could probably stretch to all of that. Why is it that you want to do that? Because you feel that your race is better than everyone else's, and you want to overthrow the government and make everyone else come under your ideology, and you are quite happy to kill people. Why is that? So I I appreciate your point, but again, I'm like,
Look, I'm
really?
not saying I agree with their policies in terms of their governmental and social policies. I'm not saying at all, but actually, yeah, okay, you want to be some racist dick somewhere? Go be a racist dick somewhere.
Stay on your lander. Don't
Yeah,
come to the rest
pretty
of us.
much. As I said, go be it
Don't cross
somewhere,
our borders.
as
Stay where
in
you
your
are.
land. But when you step out, just know, look,
There are laws that exist elsewhere, and your behind will get arrested. Don't do that.
at
I mean,
laws, there's fists that exist elsewhere. You might
I
be a king in your country, but I assure you, you step out, yeah. Look,
oh,
I said, regardless of the fact that they're racist dicks, I do believe people should have the right for self determination, and I believe that look, you call somebody the N word and you act up like that, you're determining for yourself that you're going to receive a beatdown. Self determination. I'm in favor of it.
I think this conversation went really different than I was expecting. I hope that our long-standing viewer who sent this in is enjoying will enjoy this when they watch this back, because yeah, this definitely went differently than I expected. I was expecting a slightly different conversation, but okay, thank you. Thank you so much for, as always, pushing us to think about the dark side in a different way, Mr. Storm.
Look, it's their land. They own it. Let them do what they want. I wouldn't expect somebody to come into my house and tell me what I can and cannot do. It just wouldn't happen. It's their land. They want to be dicks on it. Go be dicks on it.
Well, I think that's what's led to this point, though, hasn't it? Let's be honest. They have not paid taxes for years. According to the system, they have opted out of the German democracy. They refuse to vote. They refuse to pay taxes. They're not participating. As you say, they're setting up their own system. The problem that has occurred is that because that's been allowed for as long as it has, and then it has flurried, and the underpinning current of why they want to do it is because of anti-Semitic and, racist ideologies is why they want to do it. The problem always that you run into with these things is, well, we're allowing you to self-determine at what cost? Because once you get to a certain size of self-determination, you believe that you can impose that on other people. And we've seen this over the last years where they have had their members go out and, commit crimes. Not saying that they're sanctioning their crimes, but, it's almost a natural kind of occurrence if you have your underpinning ideology is a racist.
You get extremists together, they're going to be extremists. Extremists going to extremists, right? That's the basic thing. But there's always a way to take care of this, right? These people haven't paid taxes, right? All you have to do is write a letter to the U.S. government saying these are U.S. citizens living in Germany that aren't paying taxes.
The U.S. government will come for them.
And the U.S. government will come for them.
Just change their citizenship. It will be fine.
Right? You don't even have to change their citizenship. You just need to make the allegation.
The U.S. tax department will come for you. That's true.
These people will find. These people will find they're going to get Wesley sniped real quick. Right?
Yeah.
But the other thing is, this is one thing that never made sense to me. Right? So I'll give an example. When we're younger, we used to play basketball. In fact, no, I'll use an example from out of the US. There's a basketball tournament called Midnight Madness, right? And when it goes on, crime in the city drops. And I mean drops. Because everybody's in one place playing basketball.
Yeah, nobody got time for that.
You know where everybody is. If these racist dicks want to go live together, let them go live together. You know where they all are. So when something happens, you know where to get them from.
Do you know, here's my other question. And I don't know that we can answer this, or maybe this is a dark side topic for another time. Why white people, all right. So why is it that, or how do I phrase this question? What's the question I'm trying to ask? How do I phrase this question? Never mind. Maybe it will come back to me in another way. But yeah, I find the whole situation quite disturbing. And as I say, this is one of the things that bothers me is that you can hold all these views in a place in which there's great pains to educate you out of those views are, but yet still you're holding on to them tightly as if your life depends on it. Like,
but I think what this goes to show is that it's a myth that you can educate yourself out of racism.
Well,
right? I think when you actually break it down, it makes a mockery of the idea that you can educate yourself out of racism. There will be people's mindsets who will change because of education. But at the heart of it, at the root of it, is inequality, is inequity. It's the fact that people don't have enough to survive. And so people will take advantage of those people and give them a scapegoat, give them a reason to say, your life would be better if it wasn't for this. Because what that does is it gives people a platform and it gives people power. And people are being taken advantage of. So rather than, no, not rather, because I think education has its place. But we need to talk more about inequality as being the root cause of racism more than education. because I guarantee you,
Yeah.
you will find some of the thickest people in the world who will not be racist, right? But you will find some of the richest people in the world to be the most racist because they understand and recognize that they are able to weaponize the system and get advantages and benefits from it.
Yeah, I can't really say anything to that. I think that really has been the dark side. Thank you very much for joining us for the dark side this evening. I know you're all shocked that we're finishing almost on time, but I think that is a thought to ponder. Are we not doing enough to tackle inequality? And thereby, if we do not tackle inequality, then we will never ever get to the root causes of racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, and all of the other isms that there are out there, if we're not dealing with inequality. Food for thought for a session. We have one last dark side before we have a Christmas vacation. Are you excited, people? Are you excited, Mr. Storm? What do you want to talk about next time on the dark side?
Dark side of Christmas.
So that's it, folks. We're doing the dark side of Christmas.
No, I'm being facetious. Although we could easily do that, but yeah.
Well, I was asked today.
Look, there's going to be enough Christian ministers up and down the country denigrating Christmas as it is. I already heard some craziness on the internet. Some minister talking about people's mamas, and I'm just like, yo, you talk about my mama, there's a chair coming at your head.
Oh dear.
I'm like, whose mama?
Well, folks, this has been the dark side. We might be talking about the dark side of Christmas on our last episode for the year. We might be talking about the dark side of New Year's, who knows? But we will be doing something for our final episode. If like our other viewers, you have had a story that you want us to cover, please do send that in to us. We do our best to remember to research and to then be able to bring thoughtful discussion. And as always, sometimes the discussion leads me even in a direction I wasn't expecting. So we thank Mr. Storm for his continued thoughts and wisdom as he brings that to us, and the odd comment about throwing chairs. Oh, Lord. So, folks, have a good week. Peace out. Stay warm. It's cold where we are. As you can see, I'm wrapped up. It's at least cold where I am. He looks all right, though. Have a good one. Bye. Your turn.
Yep.
All right, folks. Have a great day or evening wherever you are. Bye-bye.